Alright, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's product training with Blue Triangle. Today we're going to talk about tag governance and really how to use Blue Triangle from the perspective of a tag governance manager. This includes anyone whose day-to-day activity involves monitoring or otherwise managing third-party content on your site. So there's many functions of Blue Triangle when it comes to supporting these activities, and today we're going to walk through each of these functions or features, and hopefully we're going to give you a really good idea of how you can leverage these for your own site and integrate Blue Triangle into your workflow. Now, if you're already using Blue Triangle's tag governance, that is great, and I'm glad you're here because there's almost always more you can learn with this. So I'm here today to share with you guys as much as I can in the next 30 minutes or so. Before we get started, there's a couple of quick things I'd like to mention. The first is you can now become a Blue Triangle Certified Performance Professional by going through one of our upcoming 4-day training courses. These will be held the weeks of the 14th and the 28th of September. And for more information about that, like how to sign up, pricing, etc., please reach out to your sales representative and they'll be happy to help you out. Also, if you would like to join one of these courses, be sure to register by noon the Friday prior to the beginning of the course. Alright, so my name is Mark and I'm the support manager here at Blue Triangle, and I do these training sessions each week about various topics related to web performance, analytics, and ultimately how to solve problems using Blue Triangle. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the agenda today, we're going to focus this training on the tag governance module. There's a lot that tag governance entails, and I know that people have different workflows for different tasks and projects. So what I'm going to try to do today is explain everything that Blue Triangle can do, and hopefully this gives you ideas as we move along about what you can integrate into your workflow, how you can leverage Blue Triangle, and so on. So we'll be walking through the tag governance module. We'll talk at a high level of the tag governance module, and then we'll actually go through Blue Triangle Live and kind of demo and walk through each of the pages and the features and all the functionality. And finally, the last thing is we'll finish with some Q&A. All right. So what all is in the tag governance module? So what I've listed here is the pages that we have. So the overview obviously is going to give you, the high level data about the third party and the first party content on your site. Now the service profiles are very important, and I think it's worth doing an additional training session dedicated to the service profiles pretty soon in the future. But these allow you to manage each of the services on your website by maintaining a profile for each of them. So you can assign ownership to each service. Is it a marketing tag or something else? And does it collect PII data? And the list goes on, and I'll show you all about that as we touch on the service profiles. The service and domain details, they're similar, but the service details gives you really a holistic view of everything there is to know about a particular third-party service. This includes what pages is it on, what pages is it not on, and then kind of a drill down step there is the domain details. So this is the domain level. So there may be multiple domains for a service, and on the domain details you're able to see a trend of the performance for that domain. You can see what resources that domain is loading and more. And again, I'll touch on that as we go. The next thing that's really, really helpful is the ability to define SLAs and monitor those SLAs for your third-party content. So there's a page called the SLA thresholds, and that's where you can set up these SLAs. You can configure them by the service. And then the SLA status page is where you can, it's kind of a dashboard of the status of those SLAs that you've configured. The next thing is the hierarchy, which is essentially a request map and a visual of how the content on your site is loading. It's also an aggregate, and you're able to see the percentage of time certain services or domains or files are loading on your site. The inventory analysis is another great page for just getting an idea of all of the content on your site. You can break this down by service, domain, and file. You can break it down by page. You can break it down by which site. You can also break it down by environment, for example, prod or pre-prod, origin 1, origin 2, etc. Another cool thing on the inventory analysis is you're able to see where in the page load are these services actually loading. So for example, is it before onload, after onload? Is it before DOM interactive, maybe between DOM interactive and DOM content loaded, etc. Wrapping up here, the domain baseline analysis is essentially our 30-day domain report, if you're familiar with that. This gives you an idea of how your domains are performing over time. You can check this and see at a quick glance, which domains are doing well, which are doing not so well, and drill into further analysis. Finally, the missing services is a really cool feature. You can basically set up alerts, and you can be notified when tags or services aren't showing up on your site as often as they should be. So you can define a percentage of time it should appear. This could be for RUM or synthetic data. And you can get alerted when it falls below that threshold. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just walk through each of these in the Blue Triangle portal. So here we are on the Tag Governance Overview page. Again, this is a dashboard. So currently we're looking at the last 6 hours. You can set your auto refresh interval here. And each of these widgets is movable just like our dashboard. So up in the top left, the first versus third party activity widget, this is going to give you a quick look at the slowest services on your site. So activity just means the total amount of time content from this service spent loading. So you can view this at the service level. You can also view it by domain and by file as well. Another thing is you can break it down by third party or first party, and over here you can look at this data in a table and export it if you need to. One other cool thing, so right now we're looking at the slowest domains before 120 seconds. It just means from the start of the page load. You can go in and change that to, for example, let's say we want to look at the slowest domains before loading before time to interactive, right? So we're trying to figure out what's slowing our time to interactive, or what could we speed up and try to optimize that time to interactive. So you can change that to any of these different milestones. All right, then over to the right, this gives you an idea of composition and load time as it relates to first and third party content. So obviously file size, and there's also the number of elements per page. Here's where you would see any current SLA violations, and we can set one of those up. I can walk through that here shortly. Over to the right, the top issues. This is our automated anomaly detection, otherwise known as the issue tracker here. And what we're doing is monitoring your data and automatically detecting any issues or anomalies and bubbling them up here into your top issues. And the last thing on the page here is this environment widget. This gives you an idea of the number of domains, the number of pages, and the number of files, a trend of that over time for RUM and synthetic data, which is very cool. All right, so that was the overview page. The next page I'm going to go over to is the service profiles, otherwise known as the vendor service profiles. So as I mentioned, this page has tons of features, and it probably deserves its own training, but I'm going to just try to give you the high-level synopsis. So essentially what Blue Triangle is going to automatically detect what services are on your website, and we're going to create profiles for you for each of those services, and they're going to show up here in this list. Now we're looking at the account profiles tab. This just means all of the sites in your account are going to use these profiles. Now if there's anything unique about these services as it relates to different sites, you can go ahead and specify that as a site level override. So that's what that is there. Now let's just open up one of these service profiles. So here's the Blue Triangle profile. Another thing you can do quickly in the table is you're able to review the domains. So here we just have our btttag.com domain. In the domain reviewal, you're able to approve or reject these domains. And as you do this, you can build a whitelist. And once you flesh out the whitelist, you're able to set yourself up to be notified when there's any violations of that whitelist. If there's domains that shouldn't be there, if there's new content showing up on the page, you'll be able to be notified. So in order to approve a domain, you just need to check this box. If there's a security admin and a tag governance, a tag management admin, both of those users will need to approve it. If there's just a tag management admin, the security admin won't matter. It'll just need to be that guy. But I've kind of spoofed the system here, and I'm going to just approve both of those, and we can save that. So in order to get notifications for domain whitelist violations, you can go up into your profile, in your edit profile, and here approved domain whitelist violations. Just check that box in the email notifications. And if you'd like to review all of your domains at once, there's this button here, and it'll open up a similar looking dialog with the table of domains. All right, so let's jump into this profile and see what it looks like. So as you can see up in the top left here, there's a variety of fields about ownership, contact information, who owns the tag. Is it, the marketing manager? Or there's risk assessment score if that's something that your team implements. You're able to upload attachments. For example, if you had some kind of security scan, you can upload the results of that here. Another very cool thing is we actually provide you with the ability to submit service security applications straight from Blue Triangle to your to the vendor. So what you would do, let me go back quickly. Let me find one here. Right, so for Adobe Typekit profile, we can click Generate New Application. And what we're saying is, dear Adobe rep, please fill this out primarily for those implementing CSPs, but this is also good information to have as a part of a well-rounded tag governance management solution. So you can copy and paste this into an email and send it to the rep for Adobe, for example, or whatever the service is. Now they're going to get a form to fill out that looks a lot like this. There's information about PII here. There's, what kind of data collection. Do they overwrite JavaScript prototypes? Do they append script tags? Do they import code from any other services? What are the domains? There's loads of information in here. And when they submit the application, you'll be able to see that over here. Let's see here. It'll say submitted SSA application pending import. And what you can do is import that information into the profile. So you'll be able to, so here we are back in the service profile for Blue Triangle. And if I were to import a completed service security application, that would automatically fill into the page here. We have JavaScript files and expected file range. Here you would be able to see any subservices associated with this profile or service, and the domains at the bottom. So really loads of information, and you'll have this, you'll be able to create and manage this for each of the services on your website. So that's just high level there. I really wanted to kind of explain this because I know it's probably one of the most important parts of the tag governance management solution here. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the service details page. All right, so we went over the overview service profiles. I'm going to talk about service details. The rest of this, the training should move a little more swiftly. So I'm just going to open up the service details for Blue Triangle. So here we can see just some high-level information about the service up at the top, a description. What category is it in? Is it analytics? Is it ad services, etc.? Here you're able to see what pages it's on and what pages it's not on. And then you can see what domains this service uses and whether or not you've whitelisted those domains. And then over to the right, you're able to see what resources this service is loading. And if you have any SLA thresholds configured, you're able to see those here. So here we can see the Blue Triangle SLA is currently passing. It looks like we have two different conditions. One is all content should be loading in less than 500 milliseconds. And it looks like that the measured value there is under the threshold. All right. Here's a quick high-level look at some of the details of the service profile, any recent CSP violations, and alerts here as well. All right, so the next page we're going to go to is the domain details, and all over the portal you're going to notice that these domains are clickable, and where these domains are going to is the domain details page. So when I click that, the btttag.com, we were taken right over to the domain details page, which is right under the service details in the tag governance module. And up at the top, we get a high-level trend of this domain and how it's performing, as well as the total number of resources that it's been loading. And just a reminder, you're able to go into the filters on the service details as well as the domain details, and you're able to modify the time period. You're able to change from real user to synthetic data if you have both of those. And just like the service details, you're able to see what pages this domain is on and what pages it's not on, as well as the resources. Another cool thing, you can click, so let's click on the btt.js, and what that's going to do is take it and trend just that JavaScript file over the time period. All right, so let's talk about SLAs. Here we are on the SLA status page. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start with the SLA thresholds and kind of walk through how we set one of these things up, and then what it looks like after we set it up, which is going to be one of these rows in the SLA status page. So here are the SLA thresholds. We actually have quite a few configured here, but I'm going to just create one for demo purposes. So what you would do is create an SLA for one or more services, and you would choose their service profile. So you're going to either make this an external or an internal SLA. So external SLAs are the legitimate SLAs you have with your vendor, whereas the internal ones are just kind of goals for your team internally. Here we can see we actually already have one external SLA configured, as well as 4 internal SLAs. So as we create this SLA, down toward the bottom, it's going to ask us for a name. You can just leave it blank. The filter group is important. This allows you to specify a set of filter options that you'd like to reuse. One thing to note here is you're only able to set up one SLA for each filter group. All right. So we're gonna, let's say, we'll see here, which one can we use here? Let's do file size. All right. So there shouldn't be anything special about this filter group as it relates to file size, but when you create these filter groups on the SLA status page, the screen is going to display just one, the SLAs for just one filter group at a time. So you can group these into kind of the purpose of these filters. So here we're doing file size. It's just real user, with the defaults. So we're going to look at the file size. Let's look at the file size of btt.js, and we're going to say the average file size must be less than 50 kilobytes. We're going to save that. All right. So we just created an SLA threshold. The next thing we can do is go over to our SLA status page, and we're going to go ahead and choose up here in our filter options. We're going to go over here and choose the file size filter group. Cool. So here we see the SLA we just created, and we can see that the btt.js file size is less than 50 kilobytes, and the current measured value is 20 kilobytes. Here you can also see a little trend of this over the last 1 day. Of course, you can change that time period if you'd like up here in the filter options. So that's a quick high-level overview of the SLA status. For a little more detailed walkthrough of the SLA status, I would definitely recommend going into our past product trainings. We did a training on the SLA status not too long ago, and it was pretty thorough and I think really informative for how to set these things up. Another quick thing I'll mention is this little bell icon, which you can do, and I would recommend it. You can create an alert for this, so when it does begin to fail, you'll be notified. All right, so I'm going to try to get through the rest of these while we're coming up on our time here. So the hierarchy, as I mentioned, this gives you. So this is the request map for. Let's see here. Let's open up the Blue Triangle homepage. Right. So this is a request map of the Blue Triangle homepage. This is the content as it's loading. So, Google Tag Manager is loading Google Ad Services and Google Analytics. Google Ad Services is firing off DoubleClick.net. So up here in the left, you can look at this by service or by file. So if we see services, it's about the same, but we can blow that up into the file view and really see, here's gtm.js and analytics.js from Google, for example. And the really cool thing about the hierarchy is it's an aggregate level view. So these percentages here are saying, for example, the pixel from Google Ad Services is showing up 19.5% of the time. Now, you can look at that and think about your, if this is something that's important, this percentage of prevalence on the site, then you can dig into this if maybe it should be much higher or much lower, or maybe it's not loading in the right place. There's really a variety of use cases on how you're able to use this hierarchy for analysis and other things. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about quickly is the inventory analysis. So, as I mentioned in the kind of overview in the slides, in the inventory analysis, you're able to see a list of all of the content loading on the site. Now, we're looking at the services by site. We could also look at the services by page or environment, or we could look at this at the domain or file level. You can kind of mix and match these different tabs and flip through the different permutations. The other thing that's very interesting here is if you notice the legend down here, the shaded region shows you the page load zone, or for example, is it loading after on load? Is it loading before time to DOM interactive? Maybe it's between time to DOM interactive and DOM content loaded, and that can be a very, very insightful metric in your analysis as well. All right, so the domain baseline analysis, as I mentioned before, this is essentially the 30-day domain report. If you're not familiar with that, I can give a quick overview of what this page shows. So up at the top, we're looking at the last 7 days of page performance for a variety of these high-level metrics. So that's kind of setting the stage for the high-level glance at how things are trending. And then you scroll down to the middle of the page, and you're able to see performance broken out by domain. And the last 7 days is listed here for each domain, as well as the 30-day average, the previous 30 days as an average. And for each of these days leading up to the present, if it's going to show up red or green, if it's plus or minus 10 or 15% compared to the 30-day average. So here you're able to see, when were the bad days, when were the good days, what content is consistently poor, etc. And then finally, down at the bottom of the page, you're able to see the aggregate waterfall at the domain and file level here. All right. the last thing I mentioned was the missing services page. So we've reached the bottom of this tag governance module, and to discuss the missing services, essentially what we're doing here is we're setting up alerts to be notified if a service isn't loading as frequently as it should be, if it's not showing up on your site at a set threshold. So a quick example of this, if we go in, set up one of these for the A3 Cloud profile, we're going to add an alert for this. So what you can do here is say this service should be showing up at least 90% of the time as a minimum for RUM data, same with synthetic data. And if it's not, then you need to send me a notification. And the notification frequency here is going to tell you, should we deliver this alert right away within the hour, or should we group these together and deliver them to you daily, weekly, or monthly? Finally, the last thing I'll mention is one of the pages outside of tag governance that's going to be probably a very useful tool is the aggregate waterfall page. And before I finish up here, I'm just going to mention that each of the pages in Blue Triangle, if you go up into the menu up here in the top right, this film strip icon is going to pop open a help video. So if you do ever have any questions as you're working through this, definitely check out that help video. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to support, reach out to your your customer success manager at Blue Triangle here, and we'll be happy to help. But as far as the aggregate waterfall, this is the same view from the domain baseline analysis. However, one of the great features of the page here is the ability to run a comparison. We can compare that, for example, to the 31st of August, the day before. And that comparison is a side-by-side with a section in the middle that shows you what's changed between the two dates. It'll show you the left side versus the right side and the percent change in various metrics. It'll also highlight things in red that have changed dramatically, green. So I think this is another really useful tool. All right, I know I went over a lot of that very, very quickly. I hope you're able to learn a lot about what Blue Triangle can do as far as tag governance and managing these services and investigating issues with services. So I'm going to pause now, and I'm going to check the chat and the questions and see if there's anything I can help answer for you guys. All right, we've had some questions coming through during the session, and there's one I wanted to walk through. So let me quickly pull my... so the question is, how can I trend a particular domain on a particular page, for a particular page? So this is actually something you can do in a variety of places. The quickest and easiest way to do this is to go to the domain details. So the domain details, again, is right here under tag governance. And what you can do is here, for example, we're looking at btttag.com. And to choose the page name, here we can see the trend, but this is for all pages. To choose the page name, oh, I'm sorry, it's not available on this page. Let me walk back over here, and on the aggregate waterfall page, sorry about that. So what we're looking at right now is the homepage for our demo e-commerce site. Now, to look at the trend for a particular domain, what you can do is open up the table view over here, and let's try to find bttag.com. And there's this little button here in the table, and if you click this, it'll trend that domain, and it'll trend it with the same exact filter options on the page here. So this trend is going to be showing you the domain over time for the homepage. All right. There was another question that I wanted to touch on about how to see if there was a way to see how if there's obsolete code on the site or tags that are out there that we're not using anymore. So if you go over to the vendor service profiles, there's actually a column here that lets you see the date it was last observed. The RUM is just our real user data. You can also add another column to see that synthetic data. And as a matter of fact, I'll just quickly point out in the little button here above the export, you can customize this table, much like any kind of typical function like this. You can slide them over. You can include all columns or remove all columns. You can save it and then get your updated table there. All right, let's see here. Is the hierarchy only for synthetic data, or can we look at that for RUM data as well? Yes, it is only for synthetic data. And the reason for that is JavaScript doesn't have the ability to access the level of detail required to be able to construct the hierarchy. You'll need to be able to know the initiator for each network request, and that's something that JavaScript doesn't have access to. So now, with that said, we have something called a synthetic auto scheduler. So if you have tag governance in Blue Triangle, you'll have something called the synthetic auto scheduler. So what that is doing is looking at your top URLs and RUM data, and it's going to automatically create a synthetic monitor and start pinging those URLs. And from that data, we'll be able to construct a hierarchy. So that's kind of a pseudo workaround, but ultimately it is synthetic data. Right, and that's a good point. RUM data can have browser plugins, any sort of end user injected, client side injected content from various plugins and extensions and things like that. So, synthetic is the clean room, and it's always nice to have that as a baseline. All right, guys, I think that's all we have for you today. So really appreciate your time. And if you do have any more questions, we're happy to speak with you offline. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. You can reach us at any of the emails listed here, support@bluetriangle.com, of course. You can also submit a request or a question in our help center at help.bluetriangle.com. And for more information about our product trainings, like how to watch past sessions, be sure to check out our help center. Again, that's help.bluetriangle.com. And when you're there, just click the big button for product training. All right, guys, thanks again for your time. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.